Brands over-index on physical goods, and they don't think enough about rewards that make people sit up and pay attention. So stuff that's based on exclusivity, on urgency, on personality, that's funny or humorous. In 5 years, pretty much every brand will have one. It becomes even more important to kind of break out of that morning brew style stickers, mug, t-shirt kind of phase, and to have something really cool that makes people sit up and take notice.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Creative Business Show. My name is Chikodi Chima. My guest today is Nicholls, co-founder of Sparkloop app. Sparkloop helps you as a publisher grow your email newsletter subscriber list by referral programs. What we discussed today is that you actually don't need to necessarily give away swag, stickers, hoodies, coffee mugs, things like that. As great as they are, a lot of times people are incentivized to share just because they get a shout out, they get recognized, or they get preferential access to somebody that they really admire and want to know better. And that can grow your newsletter tremendously. It's actually in the last couple of years, with the cost of Facebook ads skyrocketing and the competition for people's attention, growing your newsletter by referrals is a really cost-effective and sticky way to maintain connection with your audience, grow your revenue. Louis, do you want to give a quick introduction of yourself and tell us about Sparkloop?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. I am the co-founder of Sparkloop, one of two, along with a guy called Manuel Frigerio. And we co-founded Sparkloop, I would say about a year and a half ago, nearly 2 years ago now. We make a referral tool for emails and email newsletters, which makes it very easy to grow your audience by word of mouth. And yeah, we've been doing that for about a year and a half now. I think we power, for context, probably 7 of the 10 biggest newsletter referral programs out there, and thousands of slightly smaller ones. And our team is still relatively small, but growing quickly and spread out all across the world. So from Europe through to the other coast of the US.
And just for reference, if you are watching this, we did not plan to both be wearing black t-shirts. That just kind of happened.
Yeah, it was a complete chance. We agreed that we weren't going to wear pants, right? So
yes.
That was something we did beforehand. But the black
yes.
t-shirts is a coincidence. Yeah,
that is one of the great things about working from home and shooting from the waist up. So that was an agreement. But the black t-shirt thing, completely random. Okay, so talk to me about email. I think, and I'm sure you'll agree, that email is still the killer app of the internet.
Definitely. Yes, absolutely. I think there was a debate about whether phone numbers were going to take over and text was going to take over. And I think that still has some application. There are still some interesting avenues to explore with SMS and with phone numbers. But if you look at the trends over the last 2 years, we had a decade, slightly more than a decade, where everybody was being pulled onto third-party proprietary platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and everybody was very happy building their own audiences and their own empires on top of those platforms. And then those platforms came and said, well, brilliant, we now have a relationship with your audience. We're going to start slowly squeezing you and to start slowly charging more and more and making it more difficult to own that relationship with your audience, and you can't take them anywhere else. They're locked in here. And all of a sudden, everybody started realizing, wow, we need some way to be able to keep up to date with our audience. We need some way to be able to keep in touch with them, to move them to different platforms and to, really own that relationship. And what's the one thing that everybody has? It's an email address. Mm-hmm. So I think the last 2 years has really been a wake-up call, and I don't see that changing in the next 5 years for sure, really even in the next 10 years. I think it's going to be just as important.
We just said something interesting about SMS. So you think that SMS is hierarchically inferior to email, that SMS is actually less preferred than email? Is that a vested interest or like explain that?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, there's no vested interest. I mean, we are an email referral platform. We could do the exact same thing with SMS, right? It would be probably one day's work to change the entire company to just be focused on SMS. It would not cost, it would not be a difficult thing at all. It's just, I think people, they don't like having that relationship with brands and with creators via SMS, right? That's still very bound to your phone as opposed to the various devices that you use. And it's not a rich medium with which to get information across, right? It's very clunky. It's almost too personal. People still don't like being interrupted there, and yeah, I just don't see that changing. I thought there was an opportunity maybe for that to become kind of like the de facto, but it seems to be going like swinging back in the other direction, especially with I think you're seeing a rise of people having. Most people will have maybe two phone numbers, right? Everyone has a personal phone number and then potentially also a work phone number. Often it's the same one, but some people have a second phone number for work. Most of us have a couple of different email addresses for different things, kind of different versions of ourselves, right? Different identities. And I think that's one of the main reasons that, that email is just such a, I think it's just so sticky. I think it's going to be very hard to get rid of.
As you say it, I definitely can relate to not wanting, like, there aren't really any brand, like maybe my local restaurant or something could text me and get me to take action, but I do actually resonate with your point about how it is too personal to have that relationship with a party that just wants to sell me stuff on my phone, but I don't have a problem filtering it through email. So yeah, point taken for sure. Talk me through the journey of Sparkloop. Email is now 45 or even 50 years in its life, and Sparkloop is 2 years in its life. And email newsletter is having quite a moment with, very big startups being grown on the back of email servicing people through email. So what was it about this moment and your background and your co-founder's background that led to the creation of Sparkloop?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say as the background, my co-founder at the time that we started Sparkloop, he'd been running his own referral platform that was just a generic referral platform. You could connect it to any kind of business to do referrals, really. And that's still today what the bulk of referral platforms are like. They're kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? They kind of do everything, and you can kind of plug them in and kind of make them work to do everything. And what we saw, which I just touched on, was you had this kind of shift of like a couple of different things happening at the same time. Firstly, you had kind of that effect we touched on about like the platforms, the third-party platforms becoming more restrictive, and brands kind of waking up to the fact that, oh wow, I need to own the relationship with my audience. I need to have their email addresses, which means all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people really had this big shift to, we need to start collecting email addresses from our audience, and we need to start doing it now. So that was kind of like the demand bubbling up there. Originally, and if you look at how a lot of these bigger brands started out over the last 5 years or so, a lot of that was done via paid marketing. So social media marketing on Facebook, for example, via Google, Instagram in some cases, even Snapchat at a time, probably a bit at the moment. There's still a bit of TikTok going on. And that was relatively affordable. Now that everybody is trying to do this at the same time, and Facebook are pushing up the prices, and you had all the iOS 14 changes around privacy that came in, Facebook has become, and all the other channels like that have become very, very expensive. So you have a lot of people who are desperately trying to get more email addresses at the same time as you have it becoming very, very expensive to get more email addresses. And at the same time as all of that going on, you also have kind of a shift in kind of the preferences of consumers to hear about this kind of thing from friends and from people they know and they trust, and for brands at the same time to really be thinking slightly more long term, to be thinking, okay, a bank, for example, someone once told me, a bank is quite happy having a 20-something year nurturing cycle for their customers, right? They will happily start advertising to you when you're 10 years old, knowing you're not going to pay them a cent until you turn 30 something and get a mortgage with them. That's built in. They think in 10, 20 year cycles. Car manufacturers and people like that as well, right? They think in 5, 10, 15 year cycles. As an industry on the internet, we have been a lot, because we're earlier, we're much, much younger. We have been a lot kind of faster in how we think. We think in terms of like minutes or 3 or 4 clicks, maybe a couple of weeks. If you're nurturing for a while, e-commerce brands maybe are thinking in weeks. We've seen a shift, I think, as the industry matures over the last couple of years to start thinking in terms of maybe even months. Potentially, some brands are even thinking in years, right? That's why you see HubSpot buying The Hustle as a media brand. That's why you see Morning Brew getting sold off. That's why you see brands building out media arms, basically, because they're thinking more long-term about customer acquisition. And you just put all of that we've just talked about together, and basically it's kind of inevitable that, over the last 2 or 3 years, somebody had to come up with some way to help brands get more email addresses using word of mouth. We definitely weren't the first to invent this. Referral programs had been around before. You had companies like Morning Brew, for example, who had to spend ridiculous amounts of time and money to build their own simple version of this in-house. And basically what happened was I had people coming to me just with a marketing background and a background as a founder saying, hey, Louis, how can we do this thing that Morning Brew and The Hustle are doing? But without having to hire someone full time and spend tens of thousands of dollars. And I went out to my friend Manuel, who was running a referral tool, and said, well, you're a clever guy. You've got one of the good referral tools out there. Can we do this? If not, who should I go to? And he basically said to me, look, you can't do this without a tool. There's no really good tool for this out there that wouldn't involve a lot of work. But funny thing, you're like the 5th person who's asked me that this week. We should look into this and see if there's some way to do it. And we kind of played around with it on the side for a couple of months and then realized, oh, wow, this is actually, there is a massive market for this. It is performing ridiculously well. We should kind of go all in on this and see what happens. And that's the longish version of the story.
No, that's great. So it's a perfect storm, really, because brands are recognizing perhaps too late that there's never not a time when it's good to have people's email addresses. The cost and competition for attention via paid ads was getting intense. And then people's preferences have also evolved to not necessarily want to be targeted in that way. So it sounds like there was just all signs pointing towards this is the thing to do. And you guys took you took the leap, and it was the right move. How does Sparkloop actually work to generate word of mouth referrals for an email?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. So if you have an audience of any kind in email, you will be sending them regular emails, hopefully. Probably not as often as you should be doing, but hopefully that will increase as well. And what Sparkloop makes it very, very easy to do is to give every single email contact you have a unique referral link that they can share with friends, colleagues, strangers on the internet, people they sit next to at a bus stop, doesn't matter. They can share that with them. And when those people sign up and give you their email address, basically you get a referral point, or your subscribers get referral points. And as they refer more people, they can unlock rewards. They can be entered into giveaways. Basically, you can incentivize them with different things for when they share, when they make referrals. And we make it very easy to connect that up to whatever email platform you're using. We take it from, what would normally be a couple of weeks and some serious developer time, even with these generic platforms, into something that literally takes about half an hour and a couple of clicks.
And I saw on the site, it's Aweber, MailerLite. Do you guys do ConvertKit as well?
Exactly, yeah. ConvertKit, HubSpot, Campaign Monitor, SailThrough, all the big ones, really. Yeah.
And why would a word of mouth referral, trackable referral, be the preferable way to grow an email list?
Yeah. So I don't think it's the only way by any means, right? I kind of see it as you need to be doing other things to grow your email list. Probably, you probably do want to be, whether that's Facebook ads, whether that's sponsoring other newsletters, whether that's, promoting your content on social media, sharing it, working with influencers. There's a whole different load of ways to, to grow your brand and to get the word out there and to bring people to your site who will then sign up and give you their email address. What we do is we basically say, look, there is a group of people who you are in regular contact with who know a lot of other people who would be perfect subscribers and customers and members of your audience. And you're in contact with them all the time. Why aren't you asking them to share, firstly? And why aren't you incentivizing them a little bit to share instead of giving that money to a Facebook or someone else, who, if you give Facebook money to bring you new subscribers, you don't build a relationship with Facebook, right? Right. That's not engaging them more, right? If you do that with your existing audience, you build up a really engaged, just a really engaged audience, right? Because they're the ones who are sharing. They're sharing with friends of theirs and people they know who are naturally a good fit. So it's normally, we do have cases where this is the kind of thing where it does just take off and it just is the thing that completely, it's by far and away the biggest channel. But more realistically, what we say is, if your business, if your email newsletter, if your brand is already growing, a Sparkloop referral program will make it grow, 30, 50, 60, 70% faster. It's going to make what's already good a lot better, and it's very easy. So you'd be very, very silly not to do it. But it's also not some kind of magic bullet that's going to save you if nothing else is working, right?
Right. Yeah. If nothing's working, then might slow down death, but you have to have other aspects that are performing as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you just made me think, I don't know if the Hustle still does it, but post acquisition by HubSpot, I don't know if the Hustle still does it, but I think that they used to call out people in the newsletter that would refer lots of people as new subscribers. And even though it was free, people's attention is a scarce resource. So, and I think I don't read the Skim anymore, but I thought the Skim was a very good newsletter as well. But they definitely had a section in the bottom where they would name people, and that's a really powerful social lever to incentivize people, and doesn't cost anything.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It does two really important things. So like you said, that's an incentive in of itself, right? People want to be seen and to be recognized as successful in front of their own audience. But almost more importantly, what that does is it normalizes the behavior of sharing, right? So if it seems like everyone else is sharing and that they're doing it successfully, and that's something that in-group is doing, you as someone who is on that newsletter or who is in that audience thinks, oh, I should probably be doing this as well, or it would be normal for me to be doing this as well. And I think that's what makes it really effective. I think that is why it's so useful to do.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So you were saying that another lever is that instead of giving money to primarily Facebook, but I suppose there's a little bit of Twitter, a little bit of, other platforms, but Facebook is definitely gobbling up most of these ad dollars. You can then incentivize with like t-shirts or stickers, other merchandise. So does Sparkloop actually help with any of the fulfillment? Or is it really just like, here's the person to give the reward to, now you go handle that part?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what will normally happen is, if you are going to be successful with that kind of physical reward, like swag and merchandise and stuff, it's going to happen because of one or two things. Firstly, you're either already going to be giving away that stuff, or you'll probably have some kind of online store because people will be asking you for it. That's how you know it's going to be a good reward. In which case, if you do have that, Sparkloop makes it super easy to fulfill that kind of reward. It basically, you can just give people, when they reach that number of referrals, an automated email with a unique coupon code that they can use to go and get the thing, right? So that's very easy. The other thing we see often is that brands will partner up with other brands to fulfill the rewards. So you'll see, I don't know, a Front Office Sports, for example, partnering up with Bose headphones, or you'll see Tim Ferriss recently partnering up with, I think it was 8 Sleep, or it was one of those kind of D2C mattress brands, something like that, to fulfill the rewards. So they'll be doing it that way. And then obviously, if you're giving away, creators, everyday creators might be giving away more access to exclusive content, for example, sneak previews of new books or courses that are being launched, free memberships, access to secret newsletters, coupon codes for their online stores, a free trial month of the premium upgrade, something like that. That's all really easy to do with and automate with SparkLoop as well. Yeah.
Okay, so brands partner with publishers. We'll call these newsletter publishers or newsletter creators publishers, and then they handle the fulfillment of. Well, it's a nice synergy, right? Because the brand partner gets additional exposure to the audience, and then the fulfillment and the processing doesn't need to be handled by the publisher, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you're if you're a brand, if you're a D2C brand, right? If you have I don't know, some kind of like what's the new water flavored, like bottled water brand of the day?
Hint or yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're one of them, you can either pay for an advertising slot to reach that audience, and it'll be a small sponsored section, or you can pay the same amount, give a year's supply of the water, which costs you hardly anything, for free to the winner of a referral giveaway, and you'll get a big section where you'll be promoted as the prize, and it'll be looked on a lot more favorably, right? People will take notice of that when they're reading the newsletter because it's presented as something really exciting, rather than being presented as an ad, which we often like to skip over in some cases.
What excites you about this moment for newsletter publishers?
I think people are starting to realize the value of having a brand and a media brand with people who can write really well and have a relationship with your audience, rather than just producing content. I think if you look at the last 10, 15 years, there has been a lot of content produced by a lot of people and not very many strong relationships built with audiences. And it is very difficult whether you're a software brand or B2B, D2C, whatever you are, it is very difficult to suddenly change that mindset and to build a brand in-house. And I think that's why you're seeing there's a really big opportunity at the moment. On the one hand, if you've already built a media brand, to start monetizing that more aggressively yourself by building out your own products, but also to be bought and acquired by one of these larger brands that doesn't have the skill set really to do that in-house. And secondly, if you're more on the smaller side as a creator who is starting off today, I think you just have so many really easy opportunities to monetize and to partner up with brands that you just didn't have even 3 or 4 years ago. I think it's still very difficult to get eyeballs. It's still very difficult to create really, really good content and to build that relationship with your audience. But the monetization side of it has become infinitely easier. People are much more willing to pay for subscriptions. There are much better tools out there to manage those subscriptions, much better tools out there to grow your audience. People, courses, online courses, even just creating your own, like, if you want to create your own like merch brand or your own like physical product, that is just so much easier. And there are so many more better examples of that today than there were 2, 3 years ago.
That's a very short cycle, 2 or 3 years of this change. What kind of objections or what kind of pushback do you get from people when you approach them about creating a referral program for their email newsletter?
Yeah, I think the biggest one we see probably is Morning Brew and the Skim, the ones we mentioned before. They're a blessing for us and they're also a curse. They're a blessing in the sense that because they got very big very quickly and they also had a referral program and they were really one of the first ones to do it, everyone is kind of excited by the idea. They're a curse for us because everyone assumes that the way that Morning Brew did their referral program with swag and merch and stuff like that is the best way to do it, and is the way that you would do it. And because of that, you get a lot of smaller media brands and larger media brands and creators and publishers who basically come to us and they say, look, I like the idea of referrals, but I can't justify spending $50 on a hoodie. And I don't think my audience would want a hoodie anyway. I don't think they want t-shirts or stickers with my logo on it. And that is kind of the curse of it, which is to say, yes, those did work for Morning Brew and they're doing fine. But the average Sparkloop user grows their audience faster with referrals than Morning Brew did. And most of them aren't paying much, if anything, for their rewards. They're using, we've spent the last 2 or 3 years since then learning all about what actually does work for thousands of different kinds of creators and publishers and media brands. And it turns out that really you can do very different things that work for your audience. You can have exclusive content. You can have early access to specific things. There's just a whole world of different reward ideas out there. And there are guaranteed to be a couple of things that will fit in with your audience and your brand that you can use. So it's kind of like a personal challenge. I always like to take people up on that and say, hey, well, you don't think you've got rewards that would work for your audience. Let's spend 15 minutes on a call. Let's go through a couple of different options, talk about, how you monetize, what your audience is excited by, that kind of stuff. And we'll see if we can't find something. And I've never had a creator or a publisher do that who, as long as they already have, as long as it's not their first edition, right? As long as they've already started the newsletter or started the media company, I've never had someone who hasn't immediately kind of said, oh, of course, yeah, I could do those 3 or 4 things. That would be really cool. Yeah. So that would be the biggest kind of, I guess, obstacle, roadblock, stumbling block that people have by far.
You don't have to be the skim. You don't have to be the hustle. You don't have to be Morning Brew. And in fact, you'll grow faster than they did just from a cold start, huh?
You can't be Morning Brew, right? Morning Brew breaks the rules, really, of everything. And I wouldn't even try an attempt to emulate what they've done. I think they are a really, really smart team, and they've done some really amazing things. But they have a very unique relationship with their audience that no other brand really does have with their own audience. And because of that, you need to try very different things. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah.
What are the 3 most common things that an email newsletter publisher can do to incentivize referral signups?
I would say the most important one by far is to have a really good first reward. It's what we call a trigger reward. And that's the very first reward that someone would win for referring. Normally that's for 1, 2, or at most 3 referrals that they make. So it's something that everybody thinks they can achieve just by sharing to Twitter or LinkedIn or in a group message in a Slack channel, something like that. All they have to do is share it with, with 1 click from the email, and they're pretty much guaranteed to get it. So having something really compelling there, ideally something digital that doesn't cost you anything, is really, really important. That would probably be number 1. Number 2 is actually nothing to do with the rewards at all, but would be more in the opposite direction. So even if I weren't going to be rewarded for sharing this with my friends or my colleagues, why would I do it anyway? Give me something really interesting to share with them. Give me some motivation, make it really easy, and tell me who I should be sharing it with and why, right? If you do all of those things, most of the time, a really good referral program, it does require good rewards, but it would have done almost acceptably. You would have seen some growth even if you hadn't been rewarding people for sharing, because you've done such a good job of explaining. Don't just send people to some, kind of like newsletter sign up form with a 1-liner explaining the newsletter. Send them to a downloadable, a book, a coupon code if you're an e-commerce brand, right? Ask people to share a $10 coupon code with their friends. Ask people to share the first chapter of your book or an invitation to an upcoming online event or something, whatever it is that you have. And people know this, right? Brands know this when it comes to Facebook advertising. They're not sending people to the newsletter page. They're sending people to some kind of opt-in, some kind of lead magnet, some kind of gift thing. And then when it comes to referrals, they don't think about this at all. But that's really important, is to give people something really compelling to share with their friends and to tell them who and why they should be sharing it. And then I would say probably the third kind of most important thing, I would probably go back to just making it easy to share and asking people to share more often. So make it obvious inside of your email, include it in a lot of emails, and don't have any friction. And that's one of the reasons that a Sparkloop referral program, on average, it performs about 230% better than other referral tools for email. And the reason that is because we make it very easy to literally copy and paste your email, your referral code, or to click a social sharing option, for example, on Twitter, with literally one click from inside the email. We're not sending people to click on a link, to go and opt in, to add your email address, to create your referral link on a page, to then grab it, to then share it. Nobody's got time for that. It's way too complicated. Just say, look, here's what you're going to get. Here is your link. Here is a one-click, really easy way to share it, and tell them to do that a lot. And surprise, surprise, if you do that, it's going to work really well.
Anything else?
No, I'd say those are probably the main things. Yeah. Oh, the one thing I would add, I've just touched on quickly, but I'll touch on that quickly again. Brands over-index on physical goods, especially like the stickers and stuff like that in most cases. And they don't think enough about rewards that make people sit up and pay attention. So stuff that's based on exclusivity, on urgency, on personality, that's funny or humorous. As more and more brands have referral programs, and I think, in 5 years, pretty much every brand will have one, it becomes even more important to kind of break out of that morning brew style stickers, mug, t-shirt kind of phase, and to have something really cool that makes people sit up and take notice. So we had, for example, Trevor McKendrick has a great newsletter and blog of his own. And one of the things that he did that was really cool was he said, look, if you make 2,000 referrals, I will buy you a billboard in San Francisco for a month, and you can have whatever you want on that billboard. And no one achieved it. I don't think anyone quite got there. People got close, but I don't think anyone got there. But still, that made people talk. That got people sitting up and saying, hey, I want that, right?
Yeah, because who knows 2,000 people that they can influence to sign up for a newsletter?
Yeah, but I mean, it's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, it's a very lofty goal.
Yeah.
Although there's that case study of people doing jet.com referrals for, I think $1 million of jet stock, and then Jet got bought by Walmart. So the guy who spent, I don't know how he came up with like $240,000 or something to promote his referral code, but he did spend an inordinate sum of money on Facebook advertising for his referral code, and he did win, and it did pay for itself and then some.
Yeah, and we've seen people do similar things, posting on Quora, answering things on Reddit, stuff like that to drive people there. If it's something really interesting, like a half an hour session with your favorite author, for example, people will go to a lot of lengths to do that.
Okay, that's a great point. So you just said that brands over-index on physical incentives in order to generate referral activity. Why do you think that is?
I think it does, and I feel like I'm beating on Morning Brew here, and I'm not, because it really works for them. So they were clever in the way
we had Josh Kaplan formerly of Morning Brew on the show.
Yeah,
already, so.
And they have an amazing team, super talented, especially the people who set this up. So they did what was right for them. But my point is, their audience, especially in the earlier days, was kind of college-age kids. College-age kids, they love branded merch, they love free clothing, and they don't have particularly a lot of disposable income. Most people running newsletters, or especially if you're a publisher with a paid media thing going on, people buying that probably, even if they're maybe still quite young, maybe they are only 25, 30 or so, they're still probably pretty well off. They're not as motivated by getting a free t-shirt or a free mug as maybe you think they are. They don't need that $10 discount, or, if they wanted to buy your book, for example, for $8, getting it $5 cheaper or getting it for free is not really going to motivate them, because that's it's literally a coffee or something, right? It just doesn't move the needle. But access to something that they couldn't get otherwise, or access to something earlier, that money couldn't buy, that is really powerful. That is it's something that makes them feel special, brings them closer to you, and is something that it's just, to them, it is worth a lot more. So I think that's mainly the reason as well.
In my observation, that is very, very true now, because if you're a college student, I guess you're back on campus most likely. So then you're going to be potentially wearing that branded item, and other college
Mm.
students who are of the audience are going to see it. But if you are of a different demographic, you're not in school, you're probably, unless you're going to the gym or something like that, you're not going to necessarily wear branded items. And you're not going to have the same kind of peer group where it's like, oh, I see you've got that, it's like, I guess the New Yorker tote is kind of a flex. It's kind of a status symbol. It's a shibboleth. It identifies who's part of an in group, but there's not that same value of advertising for a brand when you get older and into your career. But that exclusivity and that access, there's two parts to it now, where as the pandemic continues to keep us separate, people are more comfortable going online and having a relationship online. And secondarily, people can't necessarily access the people that they would have. They would go on a book tour, musicians would tour, DJs would do appearances, but now that's all online and that's available to everybody. But what's not available to everybody is what's really special. And it doesn't actually cost the producer anymore. If you're an in-demand author, an in-demand DJ, and you say, I'm going to set aside an hour for my number one fan, I'd like it to be you. You can definitely get a lot of competition. Just like you said, that 30 minutes is a matter of scheduling for the person, but for the person who desires it, for the audience, there's, it's priceless.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want to just be careful. I'm some of the better rewards we see are branded swag, right? It does work well when it works. The thing is with that, you do have to have the right audience for it. You have to have seen that there's demand for it. What you can't do, or better said, it works well for Morning Brew because they were very, very good at branding. Mm-hmm. People really resonated with their brand. That's why people like to buy, sneakers with a Nike swoosh on it, for example, right? It's because they resonate with the brand and it's part of their identity. Most publishers haven't put much energy into branding. People will absolutely love reading the emails, but they could not tell you what your logo looks like at all. And if you're one of those people, well, probably start building the brand and try and move away from the personality-driven thing, because it's going to be hard to sell otherwise at some point if you don't. But secondly, you can't then expect everyone to want your logo on a hoodie because they don't even know what your logo is, right? No one else is going to know what that is. It's got to be, you've got to have the brand cachet to be able to pull that off, which Morning Brew definitely did. And they're one of the very few. The Skim did as well, and The Hustle. They did a really good job at that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that communities and audiences are really starting to gravitate towards are NFTs. Have you guys thought at all about NFT rewards for community participation or referrals?
Yeah, we have seen people doing things like that. We've seen people, I don't know all the words from this kind of stuff, so I'm going to expose myself as like an old Luddite here, and that's fine. But we've seen people who've, or creators and publishers you mint your own coin. They've made their own coin. And basically, as you make referrals, you will, be given the equivalent of, for example, $5 USD in that coin, in the creator coin or something. So Brian Clark from Further, for example, he does a really good job at doing that. We've seen The Tilt do the same thing with their own version of a coin. We've seen people auctioning off, like more popular NFTs, for example. I don't know that we've seen yet somebody kind of who minting their own NFTs and giving them out for referrals, but I'm sure it probably has happened. I'm just not aware of it yet. So I do think there's something very interesting in that space, because again, that is that perfect storm of exclusivity, community, and if we're honest, a big pull of a lot of the NFTs today is less on. It's not so much the NFT itself. It's access to that community, that Discord channel with the person or the people who set it up, right? It's with people who you normally wouldn't necessarily be in a Discord channel with and chatting with as an equal. So I think that is all, that kind of encompasses all of the stuff we've been talking about that makes a good reward. So I think we are going to see a lot more of this as the next year or so progresses, for sure.
Anything that people are making money off of, people are going to get excited about, right? But the NFT moment that we're in, like you said, access to a Discord server or, access to a physical club that is only peopled by folks who own a token. Also the visibility of it. There's just a lot of human behavior and incentive behavior that is really encapsulated in this new technology. So it's exciting, and
it's all the things that we've been talking about. It's scarcity, exclusivity, branding, identity to a certain extent. It's community, it's access to people you want to spend time with. It's almost the perfect kind of blend of all of those things. So I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of it.
And then what's next for Sparkloop? What are you guys working on in Q4, Q1 2022 onwards?
Yeah, it's fun. So we are at a really, really interesting point, I think, at Sparkloop, where for the first year, what we really wanted to do was we wanted to say, look, Morning Brew, Hustle, Skim, they created their own version of a referral program that works for them. It costs a lot of money, takes a lot of developer time to build it, and there's a risk that it just doesn't work out. In some cases, some people did this and it just didn't work for them. How do we make basically the easiest, most efficient way for you as a publisher, as a brand, to replicate exactly what they've done, right? And that's what we did in the first year. And we're now in this really interesting place where for the last 6 months, we got to that point, right? We got to a point where basically we could say, look, you can use our tool, and in an afternoon, for starting at $99 a month, you can get on average slightly better results than any of a Morning Brew or someone with your own brand. And took us a year or so to quite get it right with all the platforms we integrate with. And now we've managed to move into what I think is a way more exciting phase for us, which is to say, look, well, we power most of the big newsletter referral programs out there. We power, thousands of pretty sizable ones. We're seeing people trying different things all the time. We're getting suggestions about what people could do. We're getting people trying to break the platform in weird ways by trying to do things we'd never thought of before around creator coins and all this kind of stuff, right? And so we're in that really interesting place where over the next couple of months, the next 6 to 12 months especially, we're starting to roll out these things, right? So the things that someone has managed to hack together on top of Sparkloop that's working really well for them, we're building in, right? We're doing all of that kind of stuff. We're constantly developing on the anti-fraud systems as we bring in, if you have all that data from these really big newsletter referral programs out there and you see all the weird ways that people are trying to cheat different systems, we can use that to make the anti-fraud that we have even stronger, right? So it's kind of, there's an element of that, just improving it based on now that we have all the data and the results, but there's also just looking what are the most exciting things that are going to power, the next Morning Brew, basically, or the next 20 Morning Brews. What weird different versions of a referral program are going to do that? Because I think in 3 years, there will be a next Morning Brew. And I think they will have a referral program. And I think that referral program will look completely different to what the Morning Brew did. And I hope that we will be the ones who power that, and probably the ones who made the suggestion of what to do.
Nice. And then what's the skill set non-technically for someone to really master referrals? Because we talked about scarcity. We talked about, that desire that comes along with belonging to community, having the visibility. So it's much more in the behavioral realm and the human psychology realm. But what's the background of someone who can create a really powerful referral program?
Yeah, I think there is an element of just experience being useful, right? And that's why we try and ask publishers and creators to spend some time with us to look through the different options, just be aware of what's available. And we do a concierge onboarding, which makes a really big difference. But I don't think it's not such a specific skill set. It's more about how do you find the person who really understands that specific audience? And that person is always the publisher or a publisher, who works really closely. If you can write the content that or you can create the content that you know those people are going to really, really love and respond to and be super excited by, then you know them well enough to know what kind of rewards would work really well to motivate them to share, right? You know what they should be sharing to get other people to sign up. So I think if you are really good at the content creation and the content production side of things for your audience, then you will also be naturally, with a little bit of pushing and a little bit of help, really, really good at coming up with referral rewards as well.
Going back to your Twitter, which I was reading before about cold email. This is a little bit off topic, but what are your thoughts about cold email?
My thoughts on cold email, I guess you can sum them up by saying I think the best cold email is a warm email, and I think this builds on the same trend that I was talking about before of companies and brands in the internet space now starting to think slightly more long term and realizing, hey, just blasting out 10,000 cold emails a day for 3 months until the VC money runs out, that's not actually going to work anymore because everyone else has tried it and people are fed up of that, and it's not going to lead to a sustainable business. And I think what we're seeing now is kind of a divergence where there's an arms race on the spammier side of the brands that care slightly less and have, you know, a lot of money behind them, where they are basically looking for new tactics all the time and escalating it to actually get people's attention in their inbox, to kind of trick them into thinking, you know, this might actually be a real email with something interesting. And it's crazy there, right? You're seeing people like they're doing customized videos and customized automated, you know, images that have been photoshopped in with people's names in and stuff like that. And, you know, completely fake AI videos directed to that person, you know, as if they're actually really addressing them. You can only escalate that so far. It costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of energy. And on the other hand, you have people who've completely said, well, look, we're going to stop doing this kind of like mass spray and pray approach. And we're going to have people get to know their audience. We're going to have them, you know, build a relationship, follow them on Twitter, for example, really get to understand who they are, reach out only at the right time when we have something we know they're going to be interested in, try and make it something that's helpful, you know, something for them, providing value, rather than hitting them with a sales message on day one and then just hammering it home 6 times, hoping that they'll eventually open it and buy. I think taking that more long-term approach, saying, hey, look, here's something for free. I'll email you again next time when I have something really useful. And at some point, it will be the right time for you to purchase. And when it is, you're going to come back to us because you know us and you trust us. I think that's going to be the future. I hope we'll see on the cold email side. So I do like cold email, but I think there's a long way to go to make it useful, and to make it at that point when you do send the cold email that it comes across as if you knew the person. It doesn't feel like a cold email.
There was actually something else on your Twitter that I resonated with, which was that you don't unsubscribe from most email newsletters.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. Especially cold email. I find it so useful to see, you know, I'll read them just as if, yeah, as like a normal person, basically, and then I will think to myself, why did I stop reading here? Or what was the point at which I stopped trusting that person? Or what was the sentence where I kind of tuned out and went, oh, this is a spammer, right? And looking at that and seeing things that I've like afterwards, reflecting what I found interesting or bad, just makes my own kind of, you know, email skills much, much better. So I really appreciate those.
I like that. Myself, I feel bad sometimes when I unsubscribe from an email. I signed up for it for a reason, even if that's no longer the case, I'm not getting the same value. I often do feel like, oh, like, are they going to check their subscriber log and see that I personally unsubscribed? But I really like that you have something to learn from every single email. I also saw one of your tweets that you said that sometimes a cold email can ruin a person's day. So be really careful about that. Like if the tone is off, if the message is not one of value. So yeah, it sounds like there's a lot. I mean, it's just like it's such a delicate balance, because there are those moments of community participation from an email newsletter, and then there's just so many newsletters that come in and so much spam. So it is kind of miraculous, in fact, that so much value and human connection can coincide in an inbox full of spam and fake insurance offers and, who knows what else.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of those, at the end of the day, they will just stop being opened, right? I think people are going to get punished for that more and more, and just taking the time to, genuinely have that connection is going to become even more important.
Awesome. Well, I know you said you were under the weather, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Is there any closing words you want to leave us with? Any promotion you want to do for SparkLoop, or any tips for people that see the value of growing their email newsletter through referrals?
I mean, obviously, if you are interested, I would say definitely check out sparkloop.app, which is our site. And you can find me on Twitter or Louis at sparkloop.app if you have any questions, especially around rewards or would this work for me, that kind of thing. Always very happy to, do a quick kind of strategy email or strategy call and see if it's a good fit. I would say that's probably pretty much it. I mean, we have some exciting stuff coming up over the next couple of months with Pico as well, which I don't think we're quite ready to announce, but there'll be some more fun integrations on that side too. So stay tuned for that for sure.
Outstanding. So Louis Nicholls _ on Twitter, Louis at sparkloop.app. If you want to do a strategy call, what's the ideal size of publisher that can really benefit from a strategy call with you?
Yeah, I would say it depends slightly on how you monetize, but if you have 20,000 email subscribers or more, you should definitely be talking to me or somebody very like me in the near future. If you have 5,000 or more, you should probably be looking into it and at least making a timeline of when you're going to start with this. And if you're at under 5,000, anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000, it really depends on how aggressively you want to grow, how seriously you're taking it. It can be a good fit, but really, we say that it's a no-brainer from 20,000, and it's probably going to be quite ROI positive from 5,000 up.
Fantastic. Just a personal question. Are you working with Packy McCormick and Not Boring?
No, actually, we are not. He is still, I think, on Substack. And Substack is not a platform we can support, basically. So what he's done is he is using one of these generic referral tools out there. And basically he's doing what we don't do, which is you have to click on a link that takes you to a page, you sign up and create a referral account, and then you can share. And there's nothing like philosophically wrong with that. It's just the results absolutely suck. And it's a lot of work because you have to manually import and export people all the time. So we looked at it and we looked at the results people were getting. We were like, I don't feel almost ethically okay offering this as a solution. So until Substack, kind of sorts out their feature parity and, builds out that functionality to be on a par with the better email platforms out there, we've just said, look, no, we're not going to do half measures. If you're with us, it's going to be, the best experience by far. You're going to get way better results. But if we can't provide that, then we're just not going to support it at all.
Too much friction. Well, thank you very much, Louis. It was a real pleasure to speak with you about indicating value through creating a sense of community and scarcity, how people can refer their friends to an email newsletter, and that the rewards don't always have to be physical. It really can be just getting a shout out from the publisher, getting exclusive access. I do understand now that there are tech tools that make it so much faster and easier than it's ever been, and that this is really a very ROI positive way to grow. So I really thank you for your insights today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and hopefully we can do this again at some point in the future.
Yeah, it sounds like you got something coming up with Pico, so maybe we'll get to announce that on the show in a couple months.
I hope so. I think people will be quite excited.
Fantastic.